veteran and dog rescue elder from ice, then inherit a Christmas lodge blessed by God. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a bitter winter morning, the kind where the air felt so cold that each breath seemed to freeze in your lungs. The storm had come out of nowhere, with snowflakes swirling in chaotic winds, completely enveloping the small, isolated town nestled deep in the mountains. The streets were silent, almost as if nature itself had decided to mute the world, leaving only the howling wind as a reminder of its presence. But within this quiet storm, something stirred. A homeless veteran, weary from years of service and struggle, made his way through the snow-covered road, his loyal German shepherd, Scout, by his side. His name was Jack, and the weight of his past seemed to hang heavy on his broad shoulders, his face weathered by time and hardship. They had been drifting for months, moving from place to place, never finding a permanent home. Jack had always felt the sting of abandonment, a feeling that followed him even after he left the battlefield. But today, something felt different. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was the silence, but Jack sensed that today would be a day that changed everything. Scout's ears pricked up suddenly, his body stiffening as he stopped in his tracks. Jack followed his gaze to a figure in the distance, struggling against the snowstorm. It was an elderly woman, her frail figure barely visible through the thick snowfall. She was holding onto a wooden fence post for dear life, but the wind was so strong that it threatened to tear her away. Without a second thought, Jack broke into a sprint, shouting to Scout, who was already racing ahead, barking to alert the woman. As he reached her, Jack could see the fear in her eyes, her breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. The snow was deep, and the ground was slippery, but with the strength of years spent battling the elements, Jack managed to get her to safety, pulling her into the shelter of a nearby building. The storm was unrelenting, but they were now out of harm's way. The woman, though exhausted, smiled weakly at Jack. "Thank you, you saved my life," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack, out of breath and still trying to steady his pounding heart, shook his head. "It's nothing," he muttered. "I was just doing what anyone would have done." But in his heart, he knew that this act of kindness wasn't just about helping someone in need. It felt like the universe had conspired to bring them together, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something greater was at play. Little did he know, that very moment would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever, a life he never thought was possible. But first, he needed to listen to the story that this woman, whose name was Agnes, was about to share. And that story would lead Jack and Scout down a path of discovery, where the greatest gift was not a simple act of kindness, but a reward that would change everything. I can see the doubt in your eyes, wondering what comes next. It's a natural feeling when everything feels so uncertain, and yet, here we are. The storm outside had finally begun to die down, leaving only the faint sound of the wind's last breath. Jack and Agnes had found refuge inside the small, cozy cabin. A fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth wrapping around them, providing a sense of calm in an otherwise chaotic world. Agnes sat in a worn, leather chair near the fire, her hands clasped around a mug of hot tea, her eyes looking distant. Jack, still soaked from the storm, stood near the door, watching the snowflakes gently fall, his mind racing with thoughts of his past and what had led him here. It had been years since he'd felt a sense of peace like this. But there was something in Agnes's story that made him uneasy. Something about her words had struck a chord deep within him, and now he had to know more. Agnes broke the silence first, her voice soft but firm. "You saved my life, Jack," she said, her eyes meeting his. "And in return, I have something to give you." Jack turned from the window, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice cautious. Agnes gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's not just a house you saved me from," she said, her voice steady. "It's a legacy. My family has lived here for generations, in this very lodge. It's been passed down for as long as I can remember, but now, it's time for someone new to take it over. Someone who understands what it truly means to give to sacrifice. Jack's heart began to race. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't come here expecting anything like this. He had only wanted to find shelter from the storm, a place to rest his tired body and mind. But now, Agnes was offering him something far greater than anything he had ever imagined. A home. A family legacy. Why me? Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Agnes set her mug down, her eyes darkening with emotion. Because I believe in what you did for me. Because you didn't hesitate to help a stranger, even when you had nothing. That's the kind of person who deserves a second chance. A new beginning. Jack swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. It felt impossible. How could a man like him, a man who had spent years fighting battles both on and off the battlefield, be worthy of such a gift? But as he looked at Agnes, he saw something in her eyes that made him believe it was possible. She wasn't just talking about a house. She was talking about something deeper, something that could heal the wounds he had carried for so long. But I don't know anything about running a lodge, Jack said, the doubt creeping into his voice. I don't know how to take care of something like that. Agnes smiled gently. You don't have to know everything, she said. That's what I'm here for. I've spent my whole life learning the ins and outs of this place. I'll teach you everything you need to know. Jack felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. For the first time in years, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. The burden of the past seemed to lighten, and for the first time in a long time, he could see the possibility of a future. I don't know if I can ever repay you for what you've done for me, Jack said quietly. Agnes reached out, placing a hand on his arm. You already have, she replied, by showing me that kindness still exists in this world. Jack nodded, his heart full of emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He looked down at Scout, who had been lying by the fire, his eyes alert as always. I think Scout would like it here, Jack said with a small smile, glancing at Agnes. She chuckled, nodding. I think so too. As the night grew colder outside, Jack and Agnes talked more, sharing stories of their lives and their dreams. Jack realized that this lodge, this small piece of history, was more than just a building. It was a place where new memories could be made, where a man and his loyal dog could find peace and purpose once again. And in that moment, Jack knew that this was the beginning of something much greater than he had ever expected. The lodge, blessed by God, was no longer just a place. It was a home, a future, and a new chance at life. I can still feel the warmth of the fire flickering in the hearth as Jack sat back, his hands wrapped around a cup of freshly brewed coffee. The storm outside had long passed, leaving behind a stillness that felt almost sacred. Scout, his loyal German shepherd, lay by his feet, content and peaceful for the first time in ages. Agnes had left them to rest, promising to return the next morning to show Jack the ins and outs of managing the lodge. As the fire crackled, Jack allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever, a sense of belonging. It was a strange feeling, to be sitting in a warm cabin, with a dog by his side and a roof overhead that he didn't have to worry about losing. It was more than just shelter. It was a chance to rebuild, to create something new out of the ashes of a past filled with struggle. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, and how, despite everything he had lost, fate had brought him to this small, quiet lodge, where hope still lingered. As Jack sat there, pondering the future, the sound of the front door creaking open broke his thoughts. Agnes walked in, carrying a small bundle of logs for the fire. She smiled at Jack, her eyes kind and welcoming. Ready to start learning? She asked, her voice full of warmth. Jack stood up, grateful for the chance to learn something new. I'm ready, he replied, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Agnes led him through the lodge, showing him the various rooms and the history behind each one. The lodge had been in her family for generations, passed down from her grandfather, who had built it with his own hands. It was a place filled with memories, both joyful and bittersweet. Each room held a story, a piece of history that had shaped the place into what it was today. As they toured the lodge, Agnes shared her family's legacy with Jack. She spoke of her grandfather's dedication to the lodge, how he had built it as a refuge for those who needed a place to heal, a place to find peace. Agnes explained that the lodge wasn't just a building. It was a sanctuary for those who had been broken, for those who had nowhere else to go. It was a place where miracles happened, where people found hope again. This place, Agnes said, looking around the lodge with a mixture of pride and nostalgia, has always been about giving. My family always believed that what we have is meant to be shared with others. That's why I believe it's meant for you, Jack. You've shown kindness, and now this place can be your second chance. Jack absorbed her words, feeling the weight of her belief in him. It wasn't just about inheriting the lodge. It was about carrying on a legacy, about giving to others the way Agnes's family had given to those in need for generations. It was a responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for, but something deep inside him told him he had to try. After the tour, Agnes showed Jack the kitchen, where the heart of the lodge lay. The kitchen had always been the place where meals were prepared for guests, where stories were shared over steaming pots of soup and freshly baked bread. It was the place where people connected, where bonds were forged, and where the magic of the lodge truly came alive. Agnes handed Jack an apron, the fabric worn but sturdy, and said, "This is where you'll learn how to make the bread that has fed so many. This is where you'll learn how to nurture the people who come here, just as my family did." Jack hesitated for a moment, looking at the apron and the task ahead of him. It was so much more than baking bread. It was about creating a place of healing, a sanctuary for those who needed it most. And yet, he felt a sense of determination rising within him. He was ready. As they spent the afternoon together, Agnes taught Jack the art of baking, sharing her family's recipes and the secrets that had been passed down through the years. The process was slow and steady, each step a reminder of the importance of patience and care. As Jack kneaded the dough, he could feel the weight of his past slowly slipping away, replaced by a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. The day ended with the scent of freshly baked bread filling the lodge, and Jack felt a deep sense of contentment. He had found a new beginning, one that was rooted in kindness, hard work, and a legacy of giving. As the sun set behind the snow-capped mountains, Jack stood by the window, looking out at the vast wilderness. He knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. The lodge, blessed by God, was not just a place to live. It was a place to heal, to give, and to create a future filled with hope. And for the first time in a long time, Jack felt ready to embrace it. I can still feel the weight of the day as it settles into the quiet of the evening. Jack stood by the window of the lodge, staring out into the vast expanse of snow-covered land that stretched far beyond the horizon. The sun had dipped below the mountains, leaving behind a sky painted in shades of purple and gold. It was a view he had never taken for granted, a view that now felt like a gift. Life at the lodge was starting to feel more and more like home. The routine of baking bread, preparing meals for guests, and keeping the place in order was grounding him, giving him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and a new way of seeing himself. It was hard to believe how much his life had changed in such a short time. As the fire crackled softly in the hearth, Jack glanced over at Scout, who was lying by the door, his eyes half closed in contentment. The dog had grown more relaxed since they arrived at the lodge, and Jack couldn't help but smile at the sight. They had both found a place where they could heal, a place where the past didn't define them. But just as Jack was about to let his mind wander, a knock on the door startled him. He walked over and opened it to find Agnes standing on the other side, her face serious. "We need to talk," she said softly, stepping inside. Jack immediately sensed that something was wrong. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Agnes paused for a moment, glancing at the fire before meeting his gaze. "There's something I haven't told you," she began. "Something about the lodge. Something I've been keeping from you." Jack felt his heart skip a beat. "What is it?" Agnes took a deep breath, her eyes darkening with emotion. "This lodge, it's not just a place for rest and refuge. It's a place that holds a deep secret. A secret that goes back generations." Jack furrowed his brow, unsure of what she meant. "What kind of secret?" he asked. Agnes hesitated before speaking again. "My grandfather, the one who built this lodge, left something behind. Something that he believed would change everything. He said that one day, someone would come here who was worthy of it. Someone who could carry on the legacy of the lodge and its purpose. That person, Jack, is you." Jack's mind raced as he tried to process her words. "What do you mean?" Agnes reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, old-fashioned key. "This key," she said, holding it out to him. "It's the key to a hidden room in the lodge. A room that no one has entered for years. My grandfather's journal spoke of it, but he never told anyone where. It was. He said that when the time was right, someone would come who would be able to unlock it. Jack stared at the key in her hand, his pulse quickening. What's inside? Agnes looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. I don't know, but I think it's something that could change everything. For you, for the lodge, for all of us. Jack stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. His mind was swirling with questions, with doubts. But deep down, he knew that this was another step on the path he had started walking when he first arrived at the lodge. This was his chance to prove to himself, and to Agnes, that he could be the man she believed him to be. He took the key from her hand and nodded. Let's find out what's behind that door, he said, his voice steady. Together, they walked through the lodge, heading toward the back where the hidden room was said to be. The air in the hall was thick with anticipation, and as Jack approached the door, he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. This was the moment. He inserted the key into the lock, and with a click, the door swung open. Inside, the room was dark, but as Jack stepped inside, he felt a strange warmth, as if the room had been waiting for him all along. There were shelves lined with old books, dust-covered artifacts, and the faint smell of cedar. But in the center of the room, on a pedestal, sat an intricately carved wooden box. Jack approached it slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out and opened the box, and inside, he found something that made his breath catch in his throat. A small, leather-bound journal. Agnes stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. That's it, she whispered. That's what he left behind. Jack opened the journal, carefully turning the pages, and as he read, he realized that his grandfather's words were more than just a history of the lodge. They were a guide, a map, showing Jack exactly what he needed to do next. This was not just a gift, it was a calling. And with that, Jack knew his journey at the lodge was only just beginning. The secret of the lodge had been revealed, and with it came a new purpose. He was ready to embrace it, no matter where it led. I can feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as I stand in front of the pedestal, the journal in my hands. It's almost as if the entire lodge is holding its breath, waiting for me to discover what comes next. Agnes stands beside me, her eyes wide with anticipation, but also filled with a sense of reverence. The room is quiet, save for the faint crackling of the fire from the nearby hearth, casting shadows that dance across the walls. I open the leather-bound journal carefully, the pages yellowed with age, yet the ink still sharp and clear. The first few pages are filled with handwritten notes in a script that is both elegant and precise. As I begin to read, it becomes clear that this journal is not just a record of the lodge's history. It's something more. It's a guide, a map that my grandfather left behind, a guide for someone who was meant to inherit not just the lodge, but its legacy. The journal speaks of a family secret, one that has been passed down through generations, and one that will change everything. It talks of the lodge's purpose, how it was built to be a sanctuary, not just for those seeking refuge, but for something much greater. I feel a sense of awe as I read the words, but also a sense of duty. This is not just about keeping the lodge open or running it. It's about preserving something sacred, something that was meant to heal, to protect, and to give. The journal leads me through the history of the lodge, recounting the struggles and triumphs of my grandfather's time and the times before that. But then it shifts. The pages reveal a hidden chamber beneath the lodge, a chamber that holds the key to understanding everything. The journal's words begin to feel like a whisper, calling me to action. Agnes watches me, her expression unreadable. What does it say? She asks quietly, almost as if afraid to interrupt the moment. I look up from the journal, meeting her gaze. There's more to this lodge than I ever realized. It's not just a place of rest. It's a sanctuary for something far greater, and I'm the one meant to protect it. Agnes nods slowly, her face softening with understanding. I knew it. I've always known that this place was meant for something more than just a shelter. Your grandfather saw it too. That's why he built it the way he did. It's not just a lodge. It's a legacy. And now it's yours. I feel the weight of her words sink in, and for the first time, I understand what it means to inherit this place. It's not just about the land, the building, or the history. It's about the people who come here. The ones who seek solace. The ones who need healing. And most importantly, the ones who will come after me, carrying on this legacy. The journal gives me the location of the hidden chamber, and with it, the knowledge that I must find it. There are things here, secrets that have been kept for generations, and it is my responsibility to uncover them. Agnes offers to help me, but I tell her that this is something I must do alone. This is my journey, my calling, and it's something I must face on my own. As I head toward the cellar, where the entrance to the hidden chamber lies, I feel a sense of anticipation. The walls of the lodge, which had once felt so familiar, now seem to hold something else, something ancient, something powerful. I descend the stairs carefully, the cold stone beneath my feet sending a shiver up my spine. The air is thick with dust, and the faint smell of cedar still lingers, as though the very wood of the lodge is holding on to its secrets. At the bottom of the stairs, I find the door that the journal described. It's old, its wood weathered and worn, but the key fits perfectly. As I turn the key, the door creaks open, revealing a room that feels like it's been untouched for years. Inside, I find shelves filled with old books, artifacts, and strange objects that I can't immediately identify. But what catches my eye is the large, wooden chest in the center of the room. I approach it slowly, feeling a strange pull, as if the chest is calling me. When I open it, I find a collection of old letters, along with more journals, each one belonging to a different member of the family who had lived in the lodge. As I sift through the letters, I come across something that takes my breath away, a letter from my grandfather himself. It's addressed to me, though I don't remember ever receiving it. It's as if he knew, somehow, that I would one day be here, standing in this room, ready to take on this responsibility. The letter is brief, but filled with emotion. In it, my grandfather speaks of the legacy of the lodge, the importance of its purpose, and the responsibility that now falls to me. He writes about the family's role in protecting this sanctuary, and how it has always been about giving, not just to those in need, but to something greater than ourselves. His final words in the letter are simple but profound. The lodge will guide you, Jack. Trust in it, and trust in yourself. I sit there, in that hidden chamber, the weight of my grandfather's words heavy on my heart. I realize now that this lodge, this place, isn't just a legacy of my family. It's a part of me. And as I look around at the shelves filled with these treasures, these stories, I know that it's my turn to carry them forward. It's my turn to protect this place and all it stands for. I stood there, holding my grandfather's letter, the weight of his words pressing heavily on my chest. The room was quiet, save for the distant sound of Scout's paws padding softly against the stone floor above me. It felt like time had stopped in this hidden chamber beneath the lodge, as if the very air had been holding its breath, waiting for me to understand my role in the legacy that had been passed down through the generations. As I read the letter once more, I could feel the bond between my grandfather and me strengthening, a connection that spanned across time and space, transcending everything I had known before. The lodge was more than just a building. It was a living entity, a place of healing, of protection, and of purpose. And now, it was mine to protect. The journal, the letters, the hidden chamber, they were all pieces of the puzzle that had led me here, and now, I understood what was at stake. This was no ordinary place. This lodge held secrets, stories, and blessings that could change the lives of those who came seeking refuge. I had been chosen to carry that responsibility. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into the journal, and stood up. The weight of the moment settled on my shoulders, but it wasn't a burden. It was a calling, one that I had never expected but had always been meant for. I stepped out of the chamber and back into the warmth of the lodge. Agnes was waiting for me by the fire, her face full of expectation. "Did you find it?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. I nodded, walking toward her, my heart racing with everything I had just uncovered. "Yes," I said, my voice steady but filled with wonder. "It's all here. The legacy, the purpose, it's all waiting for us." Agnes smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I knew you were the one." We stood in silence for a moment, the crackling fire the only sound between us. The weight of the lodge's history, its secrets, its purpose, everything was now in my hands. I felt the enormity of the task ahead of me, but there was also a deep sense of peace. This place, this lodge, had been built to heal, and it was now my turn to continue that mission. Agnes and I spent the rest of the evening discussing what I had learned, the history of the lodge, and the steps I would need to take to ensure its legacy lived on. The journal had not just been a guide. It had been a map, a blueprint for what was to come. I was not alone in this. I had Agnes by my side, and I had Scout, my loyal companion. We would rebuild together, restore what had been lost, and welcome those who needed this place the most. As the night wore on, I felt a new sense of purpose filling me. This was not just about managing a lodge. It was about carrying on a tradition, protecting something sacred, and giving back to the world what had been given to me. It was about healing, not just for myself, but for everyone who came seeking shelter in the lodge's embrace. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I stood at the edge of the lodge's porch, looking out at the snow-covered valley below. The world was still, peaceful, as if nature itself was holding its breath. This was the beginning of something new, something that would last for generations. I could feel it in my bones. This lodge was meant to be a sanctuary, a place where people could come to heal, to find hope, and to start over. And I was ready to be the one to carry it forward. As I turned back toward the lodge, I heard Scout's bark in the distance, followed by the soft patting of his paws. He was ready too. We all were. Together, we would ensure that the lodge's legacy lived on, that it continued to serve as a beacon of light for those who needed it most. And as I stepped back inside, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would be filled with purpose, with healing, and with the kind of love and compassion that had always been at the heart of this place. The legacy had been passed down to me, and I would not let it fade. The Christmas lodge, blessed by God, was in good hands. I woke up early the next morning, the soft light of dawn spilling through the lodge's large windows. The snow outside had been freshly fallen, covering the world in a peaceful blanket of white. I could hear the faint crackle of the fire still burning in the hearth, the warmth filling the lodge and making it feel even more like home. I had spent the past few days sorting through the journals, the letters, and the secrets hidden within the walls of the lodge. Every page I turned, every story I uncovered, felt like it was leading me deeper into something bigger than myself. I wasn't just managing a lodge anymore. I was fulfilling a purpose. I was beginning to understand the true meaning of this place and what it had been built for. This wasn't just about running a business. It was about healing. It was about offering hope to those who had none, providing solace to those who needed it the most. I was beginning to see why my grandfather had entrusted this responsibility to me, and why Agnes had been so certain that I was the right one to carry on the legacy. Today felt different, though. There was a subtle shift in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. As I made my way down to the kitchen, I found Agnes already preparing breakfast, her face lit by the golden morning light. She looked up as I entered, her eyes soft with warmth. "Morning, Jack," she greeted me, her voice full of kindness. I was just about to make some coffee. "Join me," I nodded, taking a seat at the wooden table that had seen generations of family members gather together. I had grown used to this routine, the quiet mornings, the shared moments of peace before the day began. But today, something felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that something new was about to unfold. Agnes poured me a cup of coffee, her hands steady and practiced. She handed it to me with a smile before sitting down across from me. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her gaze steady but filled with concern. I took a sip of the coffee, the warmth spreading through me, calming my nerves. "I'm feeling good," I replied, "but there's something on my mind. Something I've been thinking about since last night." Agnes raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. "What is it?" she asked. I set my cup down and looked her in the eye. "I've been reading the journals, the ones my grandfather left behind. There's so much more to this place than I ever imagined. But there's also something I'm not sure about. There's a mention of a hidden treasure, something that was meant to be passed down to the one who would protect the lodge. Do you know anything about it?" Agnes looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I've heard about it," she said, her voice quiet. "Your grandfather never told me directly, but I know he believed in it. He always said that the true treasure of the lodge wasn't the land, the building, or the wealth that could come from it. He said the treasure was something far more valuable." I leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Agnes paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "The treasure your grandfather spoke of is the legacy of this place. the way it heals, the way it offers refuge to those who need it. That's the true treasure. But I believe there's something more, something hidden beneath the surface. Something that has been waiting for the right person to uncover it. I felt a chill run down my spine. And you think that person is me? Agnes gave a small, almost sad smile. I do. Your grandfather trusted you with the lodge because he believed you had the heart and the strength to carry it forward. The treasure isn't just about gold or jewels. It's about the legacy that this place holds. It's about continuing the work he started and making sure it lives on. I sat back, letting her words sink in. The weight of the responsibility was starting to feel heavier, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the right path. This lodge wasn't just a place to stay. It wasn't just a refuge from the storm. It was a place of healing, a sanctuary that had been built to offer something far more valuable than anything money could buy. Agnes stood up and walked over to the window, her eyes lingering on the snow-covered landscape outside. I know you've been through a lot, Jack, she said, her voice softening. But I believe this is where you belong. This is your place now. And I'll be here to help you, every step of the way. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just running this lodge for myself anymore. I was running it for the people who would come after me, for the legacy that had been passed down through generations. This was my chance to make a difference. I looked up at Agnes, my determination solidifying. I'm ready, I said. I'm ready to make this place everything it was meant to be. She smiled, a proud, knowing look in her eyes. I knew you would be. Let's get to work, Jack. There's a lot to do. And so, with that, the next chapter began. It wasn't just about restoring the lodge. It was about restoring the soul of this place, giving back the gift that had been given to me. I wasn't alone in this journey. I had Agnes, I had Scout, and I had the legacy of my grandfather to guide me. And together, we would ensure that the Christmas Lodge would continue to be a beacon of hope, a place of healing, for generations to come. I woke up to the sound of a crisp wind outside, the kind that seemed to carry secrets through the trees. The lodge had changed me. Over the past weeks, I had settled into the rhythm of life here, not just as a caretaker, but as someone who truly understood the deeper purpose of this place. It wasn't just about running a business. It was about being part of something greater, a legacy that had been passed down through generations. I had started to feel the weight of that legacy more than ever. Agnes had been by my side through it all, helping me with the small tasks, teaching me the ways of the lodge. She knew every corner of this place, every secret it held. But now, I felt like it was my turn to truly step into my role as the keeper of the lodge. The world outside was still covered in snow, but the lodge was alive with warmth. It had always been more than just a shelter from the storm. It had become a sanctuary, a place where people could come and find solace, no matter what they were going through. That morning, I walked down the wooden hallway, feeling the familiar creak of the floor beneath my boots. Scout was by my side, his tail wagging as we passed the rooms that had become a part of our daily life. The guests had started to arrive, drawn to the lodge by its reputation, its warmth, its healing energy. I had never expected this kind of life. I had never expected to feel truly at home again. But here, in this lodge, I was starting to find my place. The lodge had a way of making you feel like you belonged, like it had been waiting for you all along. I entered the kitchen, where Agnes was already preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, a reminder of the first day I had stepped into this place. She looked up and smiled as I walked in. "Good morning, Jack," she said, her voice soft and warm. "How's everything going this morning?" I took a seat at the table, watching as she moved around the kitchen with practiced ease. "It's going well," I replied. "The guests seem happy, and the lodge feels alive." I never thought I'd say that about a place I inherited, but it feels right. I think I'm starting to understand what my grandfather meant when he built this place. Agnes paused. For a moment, her hands stilling as she turned to face me. "Your grandfather built this lodge with love," she said, her voice thoughtful. "He built it for a reason. He knew it was more than just a place for people to stay. It was meant to be a place of healing, a place where people could find peace, where they could leave behind their burdens, even if just for a little while. And I think you're starting to see that now." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within me. I had spent so many years carrying the weight of my past, trying to outrun the memories that haunted me. But here, in this place, I had found something I never expected, a chance to heal. I looked over at Agnes, gratitude filling me. I couldn't have done it without you, I said quietly. She smiled softly, her eyes shining with understanding. You've always had the strength, Jack. You just needed to believe in yourself again. The warmth of the kitchen, the comforting sound of the fire crackling in the hearth, the scent of fresh bread. It was all part of the magic that the lodge had to offer. And it wasn't just about the physical comfort. It was about the way the lodge wrapped itself around you, the way it made you feel like you could breathe again. I had come to realize that the legacy of the lodge wasn't just about preserving its walls or its history. It was about continuing its purpose. It was about offering healing to those who needed it, just as it had been given to me. Later that afternoon, as I walked through the lodge, I passed the guest rooms, each one filled with people who had come seeking refuge. Some were couples looking for a peaceful getaway. Others were individuals needing a break from the chaos of life. Each of them had their own story, their own burdens. But here, they were finding something else, hope. As I entered the main hall, I noticed a man sitting by the fire, a weary look on his face. He was an older gentleman, perhaps in his 60s, with deep lines etched into his face, as though life had taken more from him than he had to give. I approached him, offering a friendly smile. "Is everything all right, sir?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes tired but filled with gratitude. "I've been through a lot," he said quietly. "Lost my family, lost my way. But this place, it's different. I can feel the peace here. I think it's exactly what I needed." His words hit me harder than I expected. This was why I was here. This was why the lodge existed. To offer peace, to offer healing, to offer a second chance. "I'm glad you're here," I said, my voice sincere. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I think I found everything I need right here." I left him to his thoughts, feeling a sense of fulfillment settle deep within me. This lodge, this home, was more than just a place. It was a place of transformation. A place where people came to rediscover themselves, to heal, to find the strength to move forward. And as I stood there, looking out at the snow-covered mountains, I realized that I, too, had found my place. This was where I was meant to be, and I was ready to embrace it with everything I had. I spent the next few days continuing to adjust to the responsibilities of running the lodge. Each morning, I greeted the day with a sense of purpose that had grown stronger within me. The guests were beginning to feel more like family. Some came for the peace and quiet, others for a fresh start, and a few even seeking answers to questions they had long buried. And for each of them, I tried to provide what they needed, whether it was a warm meal, a kind word, or simply a safe space where they could rest and let their burdens fall away. But despite the growing sense of fulfillment, something still lingered at the back of my mind. The hidden chamber, the treasure my grandfather had written about. I knew I had to go back to that room and uncover the final piece of the puzzle. It was calling to me, this promise that had been passed down through the generations. One evening, after a long day of preparing the lodge for a fresh batch of guests, I found myself standing in front of the door to the hidden chamber once again. The key was heavy in my hand, and I could feel my heart beat faster. With anticipation, this was it. I had no idea what I was about to uncover, but I knew that whatever it was, it would change everything. The door creaked as I turned the key and stepped inside. The air was musty, untouched by time, and the low light from my lantern cast long shadows against the walls. I moved slowly, my eyes scanning the room for anything that might give me a clue. I was drawn to the pedestal in the center of the room, the one that had held the journal the first time I entered. This time, however, there was something else, a small wooden box resting atop it. My breath caught in my throat as I approached it. This was the treasure my grandfather had written about. With trembling hands, I lifted the box and opened it. Inside, I found not gold, not jewels, but something far more valuable, letters. Dozens of them, carefully folded, written in elegant script, each one marked with a date and a name. I recognized my grandfather's handwriting immediately. The first letter I opened was addressed to me. I swallowed hard, my fingers brushing the delicate paper as I began to read. "My dear Jack," it began, "if you are reading this, then the time has come. You have proven yourself worthy of the legacy of this lodge, and it is now time for you to understand the true meaning of what we have built here. This lodge is not just a place to rest, but a sanctuary for those who are lost. It is a refuge for the weary, the broken, and the hopeless. But it is more than that. It is a place of transformation. A place where healing occurs not just for the body, but for the soul. As I continued reading, I felt a deep sense of clarity wash over me. My grandfather had always known that the lodge was meant for something greater than just a shelter. It was meant to be a place where lives could be changed, where people could rediscover their strength, their purpose, and most importantly, their hope. The letters were filled with the wisdom of generations, each one recounting a story of someone who had found peace in this very place. Some were simple accounts of people recovering from hardship, while others spoke of miraculous transformations, of lives turned around by the kindness and care of the lodge. But there was one letter, the last one, that caught my attention. It was marked with the date of my grandfather's passing. "Jack," the letter began, "I leave you this lodge, not just as an inheritance, but as a gift that will allow you to continue the work we have started. You will encounter challenges, as all who carry this responsibility must, but never forget that the heart of this place is love. Love for those who walk through its doors, and love for the legacy that it holds." My grandfather's words hit me like a wave. I felt his presence in that room, as though he were standing beside me, guiding me through this moment. The weight of the responsibility was immense, but it was also something I could no longer run from. This was my purpose. I had spent so long wondering what my place in the world was, but now I knew. The lodge was my place, and it was my job to ensure that its legacy continued for generations to come. As I folded the last letter and placed it back in the box, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This treasure, these letters, were not just the key to the lodge's history, they were the key to my future. They had given me the clarity I needed to fully embrace this role. It was time to step forward, to carry the torch and lead this place into the next chapter. I left the chamber, feeling more certain than ever that this was where I was meant to be. The lodge, with all its history and legacy, was no longer just something I had inherited. It was something I had become a part of. And now, it was my turn to ensure that it would continue to be a sanctuary for those in need. I walked out into the main hall, where the soft sounds of guests settling in for the evening filled the air. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. This place, this home, was not just mine to protect. It was ours, for anyone who needed it. And as I stood there, I knew that this was only the beginning. The Christmas lodge, blessed by God, had a future ahead of it, and I was ready to walk that path. I woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The fire from the night before had died down to embers, but the warmth it left behind lingered in the lodge, just as the words from my grandfather's letters had settled in my heart. There was no turning back now. The lodge was mine to protect, to carry forward, and I was ready. As I stood up and stretched, I glanced out of the window at the snow-covered landscape, the world outside still and serene. It was the kind of morning that promised a fresh start. My hands were steady, my heart calm, but I could feel the weight of my responsibility, and it felt right. It was a responsibility I had longed for without even realizing it. The guests who had arrived at the lodge had all come looking for something, some solace, some escape, and some healing. And now, with everything that had happened, I knew that I was the one to offer that. I had spent so much of my life wandering, unsure of where I belonged. But now, here, I had found my place. The lodge had become my home, not just in the sense of shelter, but as a part of me, as a continuation of my grandfather's legacy. And this morning, as I stood in the lodge that had been entrusted to me, I knew that I had a responsibility to carry it forward, to do what my grandfather had done, offer healing, kindness, and refuge to those who needed it. Agnes was already up when I made my way downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. She greeted me with a warm smile as I entered the kitchen. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft with familiarity. "How's the day looking?" I poured myself a cup of coffee, the rich aroma grounding me. "I'm feeling good today," I replied, my voice steady. "Ready to get to work." Agnes nodded, her eyes glinting with pride. "I knew you'd be. The lodge is in good hands." As I sat down at the table, I thought back to the letter my grandfather had left behind. It had filled me with a sense of purpose, but there was something more to it. It wasn't just about managing the lodge. It was about continuing what had been started here, about keeping the legacy alive. And today I was going to take the first steps in doing just that. The morning passed quickly as we prepared for the new guests arriving later in the day. I checked the rooms, made sure everything was in order, and went over the schedule with Agnes. We worked in harmony, a rhythm that felt natural, like we were both part of the same story, each chapter leading to the next. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the first car of guests arrived, their tires crunching on the fresh snow as they pulled up to the lodge. I greeted them at the door, offering a warm welcome, and quickly saw the exhaustion in their eyes. They had come from far and wide, seeking the peace that only the lodge could offer. There was an elderly couple, looking for a quiet place to rest after the loss of their son. There was a woman traveling alone, hoping to find solace after the end of a long marriage. And there was a young family, who had come to escape the chaos of their busy lives and reconnect with one another. Each of them had their own story, their own pain, and they had come here looking for something they couldn't find elsewhere. As I showed them to their rooms, I couldn't help but think of the promise my grandfather had made. The promise to offer peace, healing, and refuge. This was the purpose of the lodge, and I was ready to fulfill it. Later that evening, after dinner, the guests gathered in the main room, where a fire blazed in the hearth. It was the kind of place where people felt at home, even if they had only just arrived. I noticed the quiet conversations, the laughter that filled the room, the soft clink of glasses. The lodge had a way of bringing people together, of making them feel like they belonged. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged too. Agnes joined me by the fire, her smile warm and knowing. "You're doing great," she said, her voice full of encouragement. "This is what your grandfather would have wanted." I looked around at the guests, all of them gathered together in this peaceful, welcoming space. And for the first time, I understood the true meaning of the lodge. It wasn't just a building, it was a place where people could start over, where they could find themselves again. And I was the one to guide them through that process. "Thank you," I said to Agnes, my voice filled with gratitude. "I wouldn't have known where to begin without you." She smiled, her eyes soft with affection. "You're doing just fine, Jack. Just keep doing what you're doing. The lodge will guide you." As the night wore on, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was where I was meant to be. And with every person who walked through the door, every story shared, I knew I was on the right path. The Christmas lodge, blessed by God, was no longer just a legacy, it was my future. And I was ready to walk this journey, to offer what had been given to me, and to ensure that the healing of this place continued for generations to come. I stood at the window of the lodge, looking out at the thick blanket of snow that stretched across the valley. The air was cold, but there was a warmth inside the lodge that I hadn't felt in years. This place, this haven that I had inherited, had become more than just a home. It had become a purpose. The guests were arriving more frequently now, each one bringing their own story, their own need for healing. And with each new person that walked through the door, I felt more certain that this was where I was meant to be. The legacy my grandfather had left me wasn't just a building or a piece of land. It was a calling, a responsibility that went beyond running a business. It was about providing comfort and care, offering refuge to those who needed it most. As I turned away from the window, I noticed Agnes entering the room, carrying a basket of fresh bread. She had been my guide through this journey, helping me settle into this life, teaching me about the lodge and its history. Her presence was like a steady flame, offering warmth and encouragement when I needed it most. "Morning, Jack," she said with a smile. "How's the day looking?" I stretched my arms, feeling the weight of the responsibility, but also the sense of purpose that came with it. "It's going well. Guests are settling in, and the lodge feels more alive every day." Agnes nodded, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "It's not just the lodge that's alive," she said softly. "It's you. I've watched you grow into this role. You're doing exactly what your grandfather would have wanted." Her words filled me with gratitude. It was hard to believe how much had changed since I first walked through the doors of the lodge, unsure of what to expect, uncertain of my place in the world. Now, I felt like I was a part of something much bigger than myself, something that had been built with love and care over generations. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, looking her in the eyes. "You've helped me more than you'll ever know." Agnes placed the basket on the counter and joined me by the fire. "We've both had our share of challenges, Jack, but we've also both found a home here." I nodded, my thoughts drifting back to the guests who had arrived the previous evening. They came from all walks of life, seeking peace, comfort, and healing. The elderly couple who had lost their son, the woman whose marriage had fallen apart, the family who was struggling to reconnect after years of chaos. Each one of them was looking for something, and I was determined to help them find it. As the days passed, I spent more time with the guests, getting to know them, listening to their stories. I could see the weight they carried, the pain they tried to hide behind smiles and small talk. But in the warmth of the lodge, surrounded by the peaceful atmosphere, I could see their guards slowly come down. I helped where I could, offering a listening ear, a warm meal, a quiet place to rest. And slowly, one by one, they began to heal. The elderly couple spent their mornings by the fire, sharing stories of their son, remembering the good times they had with him. The woman found comfort in the solitude of the lodge, taking long walks in the snow, slowly letting go of the anger and sadness that had been holding her back. The family began to talk more, reconnecting over shared meals and activities, rediscovering the bond that had been fractured over the years. It was moments like these that made me realize the true power of the lodge. It wasn't just the beautiful surroundings or the cozy rooms. It was the way it brought people together, the way it helped them heal. As I walked through the lodge that afternoon, checking on the guests and making sure everything was in order, I was reminded of how far we had come. This place, my home, was not just a refuge for me. It was a sanctuary for all those who needed it. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the snow-covered landscape, I found myself standing in the main hall, looking around at the guests who had gathered for dinner. There was laughter in the air, a sense of camaraderie, and the warmth of shared meals. It was in moments like these that I saw the true magic of the lodge. It wasn't just about offering a place to stay. It was about offering a space for people to find themselves again. I walked over to the fire, feeling the heat from the flames against my skin. Agnes joined me, standing beside me as we both watched the guests enjoying the evening. "You've done a good thing here, Jack," she said softly. "You've given them more than just a roof over their heads. You've given them a chance to heal." I looked at her, feeling a sense of pride and fulfillment. "It's not just me," I replied. "It's all of us. This place, the people who come here. It's all part of something bigger." Agnes smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're right. It's the legacy your grandfather left behind. And now, it's yours to carry forward." As I stood there, surrounded by the warmth of the lodge and the people I had come to care about, I knew that this was where I was meant to be. This was my purpose. And as I looked around at the faces of the guests, I realized that I wasn't just running a lodge. I was helping to heal broken hearts, to offer hope, and to provide a place where people could find peace. And in that moment, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was my life now, and I was ready to embrace it fully. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside the lodge, the first hint of spring brushing through the crisp morning air. The snow that had blanketed the area for months had begun to melt, revealing patches of green grass that peeked through the thawing earth. It was a sign that things were changing, not just outside, but within the lodge as well. I had been here for several months now, and the sense of belonging that had once been so foreign to me had begun to settle in my bones. It wasn't just the routine I had settled into, or the guests that came and went, but the knowledge that I was part of something greater, something lasting. The legacy of the lodge wasn't just about offering a place to stay. It was about offering a place to heal. And I was proud to carry that forward. The guests who had come to the lodge over the past few weeks had all left with a sense of renewal, a sense of peace. They arrived weighed down by the burdens of life, but they left with lighter hearts, carrying with them a piece of the warmth and solace that the lodge provided. It wasn't magic, but it felt close. The conversations shared around the dinner table, the quiet moments by the fire, the walks through the snow-covered woods, all of it combined to create a healing atmosphere that worked its way into people's souls. And it was exactly what I had needed as well. But there was still more to be done. The lodge was thriving, yes, but I felt that it was time to push beyond what we had been doing. It was time to take this place to the next level. As I sipped my coffee that morning, sitting by the fire with Agnes, I felt the weight of that responsibility once again. The lodge was no longer just a business, no longer just a refuge. It was a sanctuary, a place of transformation. And now, it was my duty to ensure that it reached its full potential. "I've been thinking," I said to Agnes, breaking the silence that had settled between us. "I think it's time we do more. We've helped so many people, but but I want to do more. I want to bring even more people in, offer them more than just a place to stay. I want to offer them something deeper. Agnes looked up from her knitting, her eyes thoughtful as she listened. What do you have in mind? She asked gently. I don't know exactly, I admitted. But I feel like there's more we can offer. We've been helping people recover. But I think we could create more structured programs, things like group therapy, mindfulness retreats, maybe even a spiritual component. There's so much potential here, and I want to tap into that. I want to make sure the lodge is here for people not just in passing, but for real, lasting change. Agnes nodded slowly, her gaze focused on the fire. I've been thinking about that too, she said quietly. This place was built for healing, Jack. Your grandfather knew that. And you're right, we've only scratched the surface. But we can't rush it. It has to grow naturally, just like everything else here. People will come when they're ready. I sat back, considering her words. I don't want to force it, but I do think we can be more intentional. Maybe we can start by offering a few small retreats, just to see how it goes. We could bring in a few therapists or guides who align with the spirit of this place. Agnes smiled, a knowing smile. I think that's a wonderful idea, but you'll need to be ready for the change that comes with it. It won't always be easy, and it will take a lot of work. But if anyone can make it happen, it's you. Her words brought a sense of calm over me. It was a big step, but I wasn't doing it alone. I had Agnes, and I had the lodge. I wasn't the same man who had walked through these doors months ago, uncertain of my place in the world. I had found my purpose here, and it was bigger than I had ever imagined. Later that day, I made the decision. I would reach out to local counselors, yoga instructors, and even spiritual leaders who could help facilitate the type of healing we were trying to create. I wasn't sure what the future would look like, but I knew that I was ready to take the next step. The lodge wasn't just about offering a bed or a meal. It was about creating a space where people could transform, where they could truly heal. As the evening drew near, I found myself standing by the window again, looking out at the mountains in the distance, their peaks still dusted with snow. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the lodge, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. This was my home now, and I was ready to take it to places I hadn't even imagined. With every guest that arrived, with every story shared, I knew I was doing what I was meant to do. This place, blessed by my grandfather and by the hands of many before me, had a future filled with healing, love, and transformation. And I was ready to see where it would take us. I stood at the edge of the lodge, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting the world in soft hues of orange and pink. The day had been a whirlwind of activity, preparing for the retreat we were about to host. And yet, despite the busyness, there was a quiet calm within me. The lodge had become more than just a home or a place of refuge. It had become a sanctuary, a living testament to the legacy my grandfather had left behind. The guests who arrived here now came with stories of their own, each one carrying their own burdens, and I could see the change in them. Some arrived lost, broken, unsure of where to turn. But they left lighter, their hearts a little fuller, their spirits a little more at peace. And in the process, so had I. This journey, one I never expected, had transformed me in ways I couldn't have predicted. I had come to the lodge a man unsure of his place in the world, burdened by past mistakes and heartache. But now, I had found my calling. This place was where I was meant to be. I glanced over at Agnes, who stood next to me, watching the sunset as well. She had been my guide, my confidant, my partner in this journey. Without her, I knew I wouldn't have been able to carry out my grandfather's vision. You've done well, Jack, she said quietly, her voice filled with pride. This place is alive again, just like he always hoped it would be. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. It's not just me, Agnes. It's all of us. The guests, the lodge, the legacy, everything has come together, and it's bigger than I ever imagined. She nodded, her eyes softening. You've been the one to bring it all together. You've given it life again. I'm proud of you. Her words meant more than she could know. It wasn't just about the work we had put into the lodge, the repairs, the renovations, or the guests we had served. It was about the healing that had taken place, not just for the guests, but for me as well. The lodge had given me the space to heal, to rebuild my own life, and now, I was able to give that gift to others. I took a deep breath, the crisp evening air filling my lungs, and I knew in my heart that this was just the beginning. The retreat was only the first step toward what the lodge could truly become. There was so much more to offer, so many more people to help. The healing that had started here could spread further than I had ever imagined. I turned to Agnes, my voice steady with conviction. I think it's time we expand. We can offer more programs, more structured healing experiences. People come here for rest, for peace, but I think we can offer them more than that. We can offer them the tools they need to rebuild their lives, to heal from the inside out. Agnes smiled warmly, her eyes twinkling with pride. I think that's a wonderful idea. And you're ready for it, Jack. The lodge is ready for it. I felt the weight of her words settle in my chest, and I knew she was right. It was time to take the next step. We had built something beautiful here, but it was just the beginning. There was so much more to offer, so much more to give. As the night grew darker and the stars began to twinkle above, I felt a deep sense of peace. The lodge, the legacy, and the people it touched, it was all coming together. This place, blessed by God, was more than just a business. It was a purpose, a mission, a calling. And I was ready to continue that journey, to carry it forward with everything I had. The lodge had become my life, and as I stood there, surrounded by the people I cared about, I knew that the story of this place was far from over. It was just beginning. And with that, I stepped back inside, ready to embrace the next chapter of this journey, whatever it might bring.